after. So as of today, what you're looking at is a portion of the about 5 acres that I've got completed in the forest. And that is involved thinning and limbing up all these trees, weeding out the non-native species, and just generally cleaning up burning and chipping and mulching, and just putting everything back into a good state. So I'll kind of show you the process, how I go along doing it, and some of the reasons behind it. One thing I've really learned that's interesting about the trees is when the trees grow too tight together, they don't grow very fast. And it's sometimes hard to cut down so many of the small trees when you start considering what the value of what they'll be someday. But as what I've learned is that by thinning these forests out, by thinning out some of these trees and giving them room to grow, that these trees will grow up to 4 times faster than they would had you left them alone. So when we're thinning, I start at kind of in the central area, a place where we can burn. That's all the small, nasty, brushy stuff that's difficult to chip. But then you can see laid out in areas where we can drive the chipper by with all the butts facing one way are the smaller items that can chip. So those we can come and get to anytime we want. And if we don't get to them, they make great habitats for squirrels and small animals and critters and bugs and all sorts of things. If you're stacking these brush piles to leave, depending on what type of trees you have, where we have primarily fir trees which grow in a cone like this, you always want to put the butts down the hill, because as the hill rolls down and the trees are bigger on one side, they'll stack up and you'll have an more even, flatter pile. Or if you have trees that are big and bushy up on the top, then you would want to put the butts uphill and the bushy part down. So as you stack them up, they don't fall over and become a mess and unsightly. It just looks nicer, and it's just the correct way to do it. So here's a quick look of a before picture of what we're dealing with. Behind me, you can see the after. Which one do you think is more defensible in a wildland fire? So one of the great byproducts of going through and taking care of the forest is building up a huge supply of firewood. So this bigger stuff, like these lodge poles you see, I'll say the stuff that goes to about 2.5 or 3 inch will be cut up for firewood. And then behind me you can see right there, everything from, let's say, 1 inch to 1.5 inch, 2 inch maybe, will be chipped up for mulch for the garden. So usually one of the first things that I do when I come down in the morning is to get one of the slash piles started burning. I've kind of been really pressing for this because obviously we're coming into the warm season and the burn ban is going to come into effect, and I'll no longer be able to do this, so I want to take care of these piles now. A good way to get these started is I just use a mix of used motor oil and a little bit of old or stale gasoline that I'll drain out of wherever. You can use regular gasoline. I just mix kind of a ratio of that and just use a little bit of this to kind of pour on a corner and a torch to get things started. It's awfully wet and it just helps get things moving along. And don't come to me with complaining about destroying the environment, because it doesn't. It's simply going to burn off. The fire is going to be exceedingly hot, and it's far less impact to the environment of taking this used motor oil, putting it in an 18-wheeler and trucking it hundreds of miles away and processing it through a refinery, I guarantee you. So those comments are not welcome here. So let's get the slash pile started, and then we'll move on to, we've got a nice piece of Douglas fir up here we might be able to mill some timbers out of. Because this section of land was clear cut, not properly replanted, just left on its own, a lot of these little trees, these fir trees, have kind of seeded themselves. Unfortunately, the seed doesn't fall too far from the tree, and you get literally hundreds of them starting to sprout up, all competing for the same resources, and it's just not a good environment. They don't grow well, and there's just too many trees for the space. So a lot of the time spent is taking these little guys out. So you kind of have to selectively choose which ones are the healthiest and a good variety of species, and thin these out so they have room to grow. So now I've reached the section where the loggers of the apocalypse have recently been, and you can see right here these big sections of wood. When you're looking at these are called blocks. So here left behind by the loggers is a really nice piece of Douglas fir, and the length comes out to 13'3", so that's really good. Usually if you want to get a 12-footer, you want to have a foot of extra, just for trim they call it. If you want a 16, it should be cut to 17. So we could get some really nice 8x10s or 6x8s or whatever out of here that would be 12 feet long. What we need to determine now is is it sound enough, or is it got enough rot in it where it's only going to be good for firewood. So here at the butt end of the log, that's the portion that's been exposed to the weather that I haven't cut. What we're looking for is, how sound is this wood? And soft squishy wood is considered to be called punky wood. So if I put your knife in here, I can feel that it's soft. It has kind of a rubbery feel like a balsa wood. As I work this down, it's more sound into the heart of it. But I can't tell just from here. We need to cut a section out, roll it out, and get to the inside and see what we got. So with the power saw, I've cut a 16-inch section off of this. We're using a peavey, roll it over, and then check the soundness of the inside of the log. Now with the section cut out, we can it gives a better indicator for what type of condition this is in. You can see right here that it's pretty sound, really sound, no rot. It's a good log. Fortunately, this big block is really sound and in good condition. Will make a good number of timbers because it's such a big piece. So we'll set this aside. Well, I'm not setting it anywhere, it'll set by itself, but we'll pass this and then come back later in the fall when we get the chainsaw mill and mill this into timber. Here's a big Doug fir block left behind that is not good for lumber. As you can see here, it's very limby, not to mention it's a big fork, it's a split. They took two trees out of this and left this behind. But there is, with a little bit of work, there is a fair amount of firewood in this. So let's cut off a block, get our saw ready, and see if we can't get a load of firewood out of this. So if you're heating with firewood, it's hard enough work where when you take the time to go do it, you don't want to have problems. You don't want to get out in the field, whether your own or whether you're going to someone else's woodlot and have an issue. So a good woodcutter's toolbox is essential, and I'll kind of show you what I have in mind. It's just basic things where you can do repairs or sharpening. So you want a small axe or hatchet, something for pounding wedges or for limbing, just a million different varieties. I wear this on my hip in an aluminum axe scabbard because I can take it out very quickly. And then I put together a really good first aid kit because I'm often working by myself, and your basic REI kits, your real backpack kits, are really not sufficient. You want something, you start thinking about chainsaw injuries, you want something that has a tremendous amount of blood stopping material in there. One thing that is new, that has been kind of developed in the military is using is a quick clot, something where you can really stop a major gash wound, because a chainsaw wound is most likely going to be on a thigh, and hopefully you don't hit a femoral artery, but it's going to be a major bleeder. So make sure you have a tourniquet and lots of blood stopping materials, stuff that's really, really fluffy. And always just have that close by in a nice bag, and because if you're working by yourself, you're only going to have seconds to see to that. So, and then the next thing I have, of course, if you're doing any falling, is a faller's pouch, which would be added to the faller's belt. You can add this with your wedges and such. And there's a pocket here for a chainsaw file right here. Make sure that these chainsaw files, I know of a guy that used to keep one in his boot, and he got stung, he got into some bees, and he was he's trying to smash the bees as he's running away, and this point, the shank of the file was sticking up, and he put it right through his hand and clear up into his forearm. So this is a nasty thing. You don't want that exposed. So either put a handle on it, or if you do carry it in your belt, make sure you put that pointed portion down. It's no joke. And then also to add to this would be a chainsaw tool, a bar tool for tightening and adjusting your chain. So that kind of completes a faller's belt. And then I keep in here a small parts kit with the fuel filters and extra spark plugs for my steel saws. So I've got that covered. And then another nice thing, if you're doing any milling of timber, is Spencer Loggers tape, which is the best tape you can buy. I've used these for years and just really like them. And extra pair of gloves, because inevitably you'll come and forget your gloves. And extra bootlaces. Nothing worse than breaking a bootlace when you're out. And then this is something I'm going to show you how to use. It's a tool that I've come across a few years ago that's excellent. It's anything that steel makes is excellent. But this is a stump vise for holding your saw when you're sharpening in the field. And we're going to use this here in just a minute. And then just some various things. There's a raker guide and raker file, and then a nice bunch of good Swiss-made files for sharpening, and that's essentially it for the kit. This doesn't include, of course, our oil and fuel and such, but I just so happens that I need to sharpen my saw, so let me show you how this vise works, and we'll get our saws sharpened up and ready to do some firewood. Better to sharpen your chainsaws in your shop on the bench vise, but I enjoy being outside, so this little clamp makes it really great. And it's just got these teeth, so you can just pound it into a round or a stump, and it'll hold your saw securely here for sharpening with this clamp. So I'm often asked for recommendations for guys to get what saw should I buy? What should my first chainsaw be? And I could say unequivocally that the Stihl MS260 is my very favorite saw. I've got the big saws, I've got all professional saws, and I'll tell you what, no matter almost 99% of all the jobs I do, this is the little saw that I grab. Its weight to power ratio is phenomenal, and believe it or not, will run a 24-inch bar, and this is a really small saw. I mean, you got to use some reason there, you know, and not bog it down too much, but I found that it's nice for limbing, especially for tall guys, because you're not leaning over. That extra length on that bar gives you just a lot more comfortable use. You've got some biters there, so you can actually use it, and it is a full professional saw, and it's worth the extra money. You may wonder why the pro saws are twice of what the more of the homeowner Stihl saws are, and it's because they're going to be lighter and more powerful, and that few $100s that you save is going to be forgotten when you're lugging a big clumsy saw around. These are very trim and athletic, and if I could only have one, I would give up all my others just for this one. This would be my favorite. Whew, that's hot. If you have firewood on the ground, big logs that are not cut into rounds, you want to cut these things into rounds in the springtime. Most people generally like to get firewood in the fall time, and that's fine. However, if you're going to wait till the fall, you want to cut these into rounds. What I think a lot of people don't realize is that firewood dries only from the ends. It does not dry up here from the radius of the round side. So if you have logs or different things on the ground that you've fallen in the spring and just think you're going to wait for the summertime for those to cure, they'll be dry for you in the fall, they won't be. So you need to at least cut them into rounds. The other nice thing that does, especially for larger ones, is it'll cause these to check and help with the splitting, and I'll show you what I mean. Talk about checking. What I mean here is these cracks that will develop in the wood. This has been sitting out for a season, and the sun will dry it and these cracks will form. This will really help, especially if you're splitting by hand, to know where the weaknesses are, where the wood is. You can see it wants to go here, here, and here. And by hitting with our splitting maul right in this area, or putting a wedge anywhere from here on down to these points, this will break open much easier. So that's another reason to cut these and let them sit and check and dry over the summertime. So with our rounds cut, now we got to go about splitting them. I use a wood splitter, but the wood splitter I have is only a horizontal model. It doesn't flip up, and I can't split these on the ground. I've got to lift them up onto the carriage, and these are just too big, too heavy to lift up for me. I could possibly get these, but the bigger ones they're not, and they're really gnarled with limbs, so they're difficult to split. So I'll show you how, using a wedge or 2 splitting mauls, you can break these up into smaller sections. So if you are using a wood splitter, you're not hurting your back and overexerting yourself by trying to get them up on the carriage. Careful when you're using what you decide to split wood with as far as pounding on wedges. Wood splitting mauls like these are designed to hit metal to metal. They're a little bit softer material. They're not as hard as your splitting axes or regular good quality falling axes. And if you hit metal to metal with a good falling axe, it will splinter and break and crack, and you could get a piece in your eye and it'll destroy your axe. So you don't want to do that. But if you're going to split and pound metal to metal, make sure you use a designated splitting maul. You can use just a regular wedge, or what I like to do is just using an old kind of a crummier splitting maul, is I'll set this in the wood on the corners and use this as my wedge. One of the most useful tools that I've ever bought, and I bought this on a whim at a logging shop one time, is this small handled pike or spike. You can get these, I've seen old antique versions of them for moving things around. This one here is from steel. It's got a hardened tip on it, and I would be lost without this. This saves so much work from moving things around, and it prevents you from having to bend over, picking up everything off the ground. It's got a nice big foam handle on it, and the way the hook is designed, it holds really good. So I'll kind of show you how I use it and why I find it so indispensable. So I think you can see the utility of this. It's just so handy for so many things. Picking up limbs, just all those things to help you from bending over. And when you're using your wood splitter, using this instead of your hand, rolling material around, is just an extra layer of safety, and it's just a great tool. So make one yourself or get one of these. If you do a lot of firewood, it'll change your life. Really enjoy it. It's a very, very handy tool. So this is about all I had to share with you guys today. You might be asking, you know, what this doesn't do me much good. I don't have a fireplace, or I don't heat with wood. But one thing I might recommend to you, especially if you guys have small kids, be boys or girls, is to contact your local Forest Service department if you live in the West, and you can go up, and for a very nominal fee you can get a wood cutting permit. And one great ministry that you can do if you're looking for something to do that you can really help people out in a practical way is going up and taking your kids and cutting a load of firewood. Contact your local churches, especially in the fall and the winter time. There's a lot of real hard cases out there, and a lot of times lower income people heat with wood, and because of age or sickness, many different reasons, they just don't have the ability to go get it themselves or the money to purchase it. So to be able to take your kids up and experience being outside and the camaraderie of working together, I think cutting firewood has always been a real communal vocation or experience that is something that is great for father and son, or father and daughter to do, or brothers or family members or friends, and to be able to enjoy that is really meaningful. Jack and I cut firewood together, and it's something we've done since he was really little and have really enjoyed doing. So even if you have a small truck or a trailer, it doesn't take very much, but I can't tell you how much someone would appreciate that. You know, as I said, contact your pastors, local churches. There's always someone in need, and they can put you in touch with a family that would very much appreciate that, and that's a wonderful thing you could do and set a very good example for your kids. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video. Oh, also, don't forget, not this weekend, but next weekend is going to be the Mother Earth Fair, News Fair in Puyallup, Washington. And we're going to be up there, Mrs. Wranglerstar and I, and Sister Star. We're going to be conducting some interviews with some of the keynote speakers. So look for that, and look for us if you'd like to meet us and we could spend some time together. We will be up there. Order your tickets online now and you'll save quite a bit versus buying them at the gate. So so look for that. We've got some exciting interviews with some really interesting people, so we'll be sharing those in the future. But thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.